When you signed, was there a lot of help as far as how to deal with the finance end?
When I got drafted, I left school, and I tell the story, I had $187 in my Regions account. Then I go work out and train for 3 months, go through the combine and go through the NFL draft. Now I have millions of dollars.
Hey guys, welcome to the Troy Gramling podcast. I'm so glad that you're joining us today. Whether you're watching on the video version on YouTube or one of the other streaming platforms for the podcast, we love to talk to interesting people and hear their story so that we can partner with them and reach our potential. And today we have Ronnie Brown. He's a former NFL player from right here in Miami in the sense that he played for the Dolphins. And today he's a wealth manager. So he's an incredible person with an amazing story. And I know we've all got something we can learn from him. Ronnie, it is great to have you with us today.
Thank you, Troy. Thank you guys for having me, allowing me to be a part of your platform. I appreciate the interesting guy, or I guess the important people. It's great to be in that category. But just a little bit about myself. My connection to Miami is, well, let me back up a little bit. So I'm a small town kid, grew up in Cartersville, Georgia, Northwest Georgia, a town of about 24,000. More lately known for Trevor Lawrence, who's the Jaguars quarterback. Went to my high school as well. But for me, growing up in an environment where, religion was a big part of that, but, the environment as well was, challenging environment. And so sports became my outlet, and went to Auburn University to play football. And upon graduating and finishing school there, I was selected as the second overall pick to the Miami Dolphins in 2005 and played 10 years in the NFL. And then upon that, transitioned from that into finance. And so just trying to figure out how to keep throwing things at a wall and, adding my that's what I like to think of it as. I'm a father, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, family man, I'm a former NFL player. I work in finance and, trying to continue adding, different layers to myself. So, it's an honor to be here.
So tell us a little, so how many children do you have?
So I have two. I have a 10-year-old son, and my daughter will actually be 8 tomorrow. And so, of course, as you can imagine, she's the leader of the household, and she knows it. But it's interesting, man. I love every minute of it, and being involved, and being a part of their sporting events, and being a part of their growth and development. And it's never it's every day is a new task.
So now I had two boys and a girl. So which is more challenging, the boy or the girl?
Um, I think they're equally as challenging because they come with something different. My
Right.
son, he's the older, so he was the first. And so that's when you're trying to figure it out. So you feel like you got a little bit better lay of the land with having your second child, only to realize that girls are different than boys. And so just trying to figure it out. And they both are interesting in the fact that they have their own little personalities. My daughter's a little bit more free-spirited, where my son's kind of similar to myself, stays within the lines, don't like conflict. And so it's pretty interesting to watch the two of them grow.
Yeah, it took me a little while to get used to the emotional side of my little girl. It's raising my voice, all that kind of stuff, affected her differently than it did the two boys. So it took me a little while to get used to that.
Yeah, no, I understand that, which it's weird because my son is the older, but he's the more sensitive of the two.
Oh, really?
My daughter's more, you know, just head mentally strong. And so it's a little bit different in that aspect. So if I raise my voice at him, he'll get teary-eyed a little bit, whereas she's kind of like, are you serious or are you not? So it's interesting.
Oh, my daughter is getting married in February. So I'm trying to get, and I'm going to perform the wedding. So I'm trying to get emotionally prepared for that event.
Well, good luck with that. Let's see if you're going to hold it together and not cry.
I'm not very confident, that's for sure. So, hey, I was going to ask you, so you went to small town, but you guys went undefeated. Then you were talking about Trevor Lawrence. I mean, just that many good athletes in that small town, or did y'all do some recruiting?
Well, it's not much to do. And so that's the benefit, I think, when you grow up in a small town. It's a small community. Sports are a huge part of that. Even now, like I still go up on Friday nights. I'll go watch, some of the high school football. I'm still involved as a mentor, working with some of the seniors. And so that's just kind of the thing in a small town that you get. Communities very involved. Everyone puts their arms around you. And so it's still pretty cool to go back and get that experience on Friday nights and, see Friday night football. And, so it wasn't a lot going on outside of the sports, and everyone was pretty much, in the community involved and, participated on Friday nights.
So when you got to Auburn, I mean, the college had to be as big as was it as large as the city you grew up in?
It actually is. I think that from population standpoint, I think Auburn's attendance is about the same as my hometown. And so that was pretty cool. But even though like with that, Auburn's a small town in itself, like it's not a lot to do outside of the city of Auburn. So it was pretty cool. I enjoyed it. And that was part of the reason that I chose Auburn, because of the similarities, between my hometown.
Well, what were some of the biggest challenges going from high school football to college football?
The biggest one was, obviously feeling like you're the man in high school, and then now you're the low man on the totem pole again, with the expectation of, being double A player of the year, and you think you're going to go in and get some playing time as a freshman, only to realize, hey, man, like I'm not prepared. I'm not ready for this, end up redshirting. And so that was a challenge. And then, just the mental part of it is making that transition, going into my second year, not really playing a lot, and so having to make that adjustment, I think deepening my faith was a big part of that. We had a chaplain that was really involved. So he started going through, at that time of having a little adversity, we started going through the purpose-driven life, and we did the workbook and the whole thing. And so that was a big influence in my life, and, unexpected at the time, but it was great. So all of those challenges, along with trying to pair that with being successful in football, going through the ebbs and flows of that, as a young man, growing into a young man, and, finding and developing myself as a football player as well, and outside of football, only to lead to the path of, being drafted and, realizing the differences, with that as well.
Yeah. So you were get drafted high. What would you say? Second? Is that what you said? So were there ever any time between high school and college where you thought about throwing in the towel or giving up, or did you just always know you weren't going to?
Yeah, there were plenty of those moments, if I'm being honest and transparent. We didn't have the transfer portal, so that was a good thing. But, I think going in and, I think a lot of times, being from a small town, you make that transition in the collegiate life, trying to understand what that looks like, not playing football with the expectation of coming in and participating and contributing early, not doing that, then going with having to sit on the bench. And, one of my best friends now is, was the running back that came in my second year, and he's starting over me. And so dealing with, I think that adversity. And then, like I said, that led to, me having to kind of come to Jesus moment and having to go sit down with, at the time, someone that I trusted a lot was our chaplain and Chet Williams. And then, having that moment, missing winter workout, having to do this, I think, what is it? Discipline workouts at 5:00 in the morning, only to realize, like, man, I don't know if this is worth it. And this is a lot of hard work. And so, there were a bunch of moments to where I kind of second guessed, like, okay, is this for me? Is this thing really for me? And I'm happy to take it out. And it was one of the best decisions, I could have ever made, going through that adversity and learning and growing through those things, into the young man I am today. I think that played a huge part in that.
Yeah, because so many times we tend to think, man, you were drafted second. It was just a clear walk. You know what I mean? We forget that everybody has those challenges and those struggles and those thoughts of, is the price worth it in that moment?
Right. And it's, I think it's the old saying, to whom much is given, much is required. And I think we kind of underestimate that, only to realize in certain moments, for those tasks, if you want to achieve great things, that comes with great sacrifices, individually and sometimes collectively, depending on what those things are. And so, that was just one of those moments in trying to climb that mountain to get to, the NFL. There's a lot of, adversities that you have to grow through and that you go through, to develop that strength, and to flex that muscle and grow that muscle of being persistent and consistent at the same time.
So what's draft day like, just emotionally?
It was a lot. I think, and I tell people, because I wasn't the number one running back on my team, I was considered the backup running back. And so to be invited to the draft, which was in New York at the time, I was nervous about that process, because it's like, hey man, like, who's going to draft the second back? And so, going through that, it was a great experience. We went to New York with my family, which was awesome experience, spending a lot of time with them in New York for a week. And then draft day, it was just, the anticipation of, for me, it was growing up, I just wanted the opportunity to play in the NFL. Now I'm here with the opportunity to be a first round draft pick. And so going through that, and then, getting that phone call from then Commissioner Paul Tagliabue, to say, hey, man, you getting an opportunity, what a blessing that is. And the opportunity to pursue that thing that, I only dreamt about, as a little kid, and for it to be a realization. It was so many emotions, excitement, nervousness, a little bit of fear, the anticipation of that, the unease of seeing what's next, sharing that moment, the joy with family, so it was so many emotions in a short window. So it was a lot, but it was an amazing experience with the people that I love most. And so it was great to have them there in support, and it was kind of what I'd grown accustomed to, being from small town and having a pretty close-knit family.
Right. Yeah. It had to be an incredible day for the whole family. Very cool that they get to be there and be a part of it, because now they can back you up when you tell your kids all these stories, that you got proof, you got family that can stand with you on those things.
And I think those experiences, it's like, we go through life and we have really cool experiences, but the things that make those things worth it is the people that we get to share those moments with. And so, for that to be a dream of mine and a passion growing up, to be able to share it with my parents, who are no longer with us, my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time. So, the people that are really important, and being able to look back on those moments now and, share those memories with, my son and my daughter, about, the people that were there with me, to experience that had supported me all the way up through that point of life, for us to get there, and that's what it felt like. It's like, hey, we made it because you guys were just a part of this, as, I was putting in the work, and it took a lot of hard work, but, there were moments where I had to make phone calls to some of them, and, they had to encourage me and motivate me to get through that process. And so, that meant a lot.
That's awesome. Now, I remember I was going to show my age here. I was listening to Larry Bird talk one time, and he's talking about how it wasn't until, I think, the first or second practice where he realized he was going to be okay in the league. Did you go in thinking, I can do this, or was there a certain moment when you thought, you know what, I'm going to be okay. I can not only play, I can succeed at this level?
Yeah, it was, part of me is, I've always had a quiet confidence, and I guess a lot of times it come off as being, humble, having humility. But when I walked in the locker room, to the likes of the Jason Taylors, the Zach Thomases, the Junior Seau's, guys like that I had watched on TV, the Ricky Williams, who I admired what he does as a running back. And so to be in the locker room with those guys, it was a challenge every day, for me to say, okay, like, I've made it. And, I'm just looking at it like I got a lot of work to do. And so approaching it that way, but then also, those guys taking me under their wing and saying, hey, like, Ronnie, let us help mentor you in some aspects of how to do this game. And, I watched Zach, how he prepared, and Jason, how, he was able to do the things in the community. And so take something from all of those guys, Junior, how, he was able to be a people's person, like everybody, he had an upbeat spirit and all of those things. And so trying to take and learn from each one of them and, put it into my little mixture of and concoction of, okay, how do I want to present myself? And, on that other side of it is just putting in the work. And so I never really got comfortable to say, hey, I made it. But watching those guys do what they did, it was kind of like, okay, I have to hold my own and be accountable in that, in that aspect.
Is there a game that sticks out as far as when you look back, as far as just was a bit bigger or more important or than the rest of them?
Yeah, we had one. We had a few games. We had a Monday night game, I think, against the Jets. But I think there was that Sunday game in New England where we brought out the Wildcat, and Ricky and myself and Patrick Cobbs and Lusaka Polite, all of our running back room were able to get on the field at the same time, and the day that we had that, we went in New England in Foxborough, and we caught them off guard and we were able to win that game big. I accounted for, along with my teammates, 5 touchdowns. And so just that experience that we had at that time, we going into the season, didn't have a win. And so to spring that thing on and to grow legs the way that it did across the NFL, and even now seeing some of the younger running backs getting the opportunity to get the direct snaps, that's a pretty cool thing to look back at and say, hey man, we really did this thing, and it was pretty cool experience for us.
Now you played quite a while in the NFL, especially as a running back. So were you really intentional and disciplined as far as the way you took care of yourself and what you ate? Were you just what would you say helped you to play for so long at such a high level?
Yeah, it was a mixture. For me to be able to play 10 years, it was learning that part of it, from guys like Zach, and trying to learn eating habits, because we didn't have, like they do now, like you learn about nutrition in college and they have training tables and they have all of these resources. Whereas now I'm kind of just watching other guys growing up in a small town in a country, pretty much country town, you eat whatever, and so now trying to figure out how to learn how to be a professional. I just tended to watch guys. I'm a big believer in success leaves clues. And so I try to watch guys and see what they were doing. And so learning eating habits, learning, more about my body and rest and, maintenance. And, Ricky did a lot of yoga. And so he talked us into going to hot yoga classes occasionally. And so trying to learn all of those things. And then the other part of it is just, the hard work too. Like you put in a lot of hard work, you try to prepare yourself. And I talk to my kids about the 5 Ps, proper preparation prevents poor performance. So you try to do that. And then along with the other part of it is just blessing. Like, anytime you go out, there's an opportunity for you to get injured or get hurt. And, luckily it was on my side to where I never really experienced one of those early in my career that took my career away. And I was able to play, for as long as I did.
Now, we'll talk a little bit about what you're doing now. I know it's in the finance world.
When you signed, and was there a lot of help as far as how to deal with the finance end, or is that, what led you in that direction? Or
yeah, that's exactly what led me in this direction, because, and I had hired, an advisor and, an agent, but it's, to the degree of, you come from a certain community. So there's only so much guidance and understanding from your specific situation that can be, talked to. For me, I'd never been around anybody with a lot of money. I'd never been in that situation. I was first generation. And so that was one of the things that scared me the most. When I got drafted, I left school, and I tell the story, I had $187 in my Regions account. Then I go work out and train for 3 months, go through the combine and go through the NFL draft. Now I have millions of dollars. Well, I don't have any idea of how to prudently manage this money, and steward, what I've been blessed with. And so it's like, okay, well, I need to equip myself with information and knowledge and put people around me. So having a financial advisor, have those conversations, provide some guidance and direction, but how to navigate that, with my own unique situation, dealing with family members, dealing with friends, and trying to say, okay, these are some of the things that you're going to deal with. All of those things, that was just trying to learn it on the fly. And so I wanted to know, we all hear about the negative stories. We hear about the unfortunate situations. And so I was just like, okay, how do I prepare myself to not be one of those, negative stories? And so as I learned that information, it became a catalyst to me wanting to know. And then seeing as I got older in the locker room, it's like, oh, well, I love to help, young men and, other people with, this struggle. Because I think when you go to college, everyone's goal is to try to figure out how to make more money, but nobody gives you the playbook on how to manage it or what to do with those things, or, whether it's buying your first home or trying to navigate this space. And, as a young adult being drafted at 22, 23 years old, how do I navigate all this? How do I plan for retirement at this age? And so it's so much that goes into it. I just became intrigued with that information and trying to get to know it. And, and upon knowing it, I'm like, okay, well, it's only good if I share it, and share my experiences, with other people. And so that's why I was blessed, because I didn't do finance in school. And so it was just big and saying, God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. And it's just like, I think my experiences were exactly for that, to be able to share these moments, with other young people and talk about, hey, we're never, where we want to be, but we just got to keep continuing to work on how to get there.
So tell us, what exactly are you doing now?
Yeah, so I'm a wealth manager, investment advisor, I guess you would say. But more importantly, it's a holistic view that I take, and it's based off of my experiences. Like, as a young man, 23 years old, who goes from having $187 to millions of dollars to trying to figure it out and navigate it from Cartersville, Georgia to Miami, Florida. There's a big difference in that. And you're used to seeing people on South Beach, and people got money everywhere, and trying to stay away from the temptations of all of those things, adjusting to what's life's like in the NFL. So I think being able to navigate through that stuff, I think sometimes I believe that, the best education is experience. And so to be able to go through that and speak to it, and speak to what a lot of these, individuals will face, or, we all have life's big events, whether that's collegiate or college for kids, or, weddings, anniversaries, deaths. There's certain things that happen that sometimes we aren't equipped for. We're not ready for. And so just trying to speak into those. So it's just great to be able to be a part of, those conversations.
So I like what you said, when you think about the idea of wealth management, and when you see, so you deal with, some folks who have resources, the folks who, to be able to create wealth, I guess I would ask it this way. Is it a mindset? Is it a certain, in other words, are there a lot of skilled people who never build wealth? Or what's some of the things that you've seen that actually leads to building wealth?
Yeah, I think the biggest part, like you said, is mindset, self-discipline. I think that's the majority of it, because sometimes I think when you're in a position to be able to do certain things, are you equipped, or are you disciplined enough to say no when you have the means, or you have the opportunity to do those things? Or are you disciplined enough to establish the habits to get to that point where you're trying to get to, and tell yourself no, and being strict and, disciplined in those actions to build those habits? And, I think that's the importance of habit stacking, and I think as an athlete, that was one of the advantages, like being in the locker room and setting goals and, being able to do that. I think that's really important, because on an individual scale, that's the same thing you do in accumulating wealth. Like, you have to set goals, or objectives, because goals are things that you reach and then you just kind of throw them away. But objectives, you start checking things off, and it becomes habit stacking, and, you try to be disciplined in staying of course. Obviously you got to put guardrails in place that occasionally you'll get out of your lane and you'll overspend sometimes, but at least keeping it within those limits and parameters of what you're trying to establish.
So would you say that most our biggest challenge is not so much what we bring in as what we send out, the expense side of the account?
Yeah, it is 1,000%, and it's, being understanding, and you have to give yourself grace, because occasionally we are going to mess up, but it's like putting those things in place. We all need accountability partners. That's all essentially I am, as a wealth manager. But the same thing when you go to the gym, we all know how to eat healthy. We all know what we should and shouldn't be putting in our body. We all know that we need to work out, for at least a certain time of day. But we need accountability partners, whether that's friends or family or people around us that are going to, hold us accountable. That's the same thing, in everything that we do in life. Like, we need those accountability partners that are going to be able to be transparent and honest with us and tell us what we need to hear rather than what we want to hear. And sometimes it's not, where we want to hear it, but it's needed. And so that's the same approach I take, is like, trying to be a coach in this space and saying, hey, listen, we got to communicate. That's where the most important part of it is, and developing that relationship and that trust. But also it's just, now just kind of having an understanding what those goals, those objectives are, and how do we get there together.
Now, I know, you're a parent now, and then I'm sure you've dealt with folks who they create wealth, and then of course they have children. What are some of the keys to being able to then not your wealth not destroying your kids, but actually for them to be able to, to build upon it as opposed to lose it or destroy them?
Yeah, I think the biggest part is, I think it's spare the rod, spoil the child. Like, and I think there has to be accountability across the board, and so I think we look at it collectively as a community, as a society, as correction is wrong, but it's necessary. I think correction is very necessary, and having those people around you and having the right people in place that are going to tell you, like, hey, you probably shouldn't have done that, Ronnie, like that wasn't a great decision. And so when we have those people in place, those accountability partners, it helps manage those situations, and a lot of times I feel like, we as parents, we try to provide and give our kids what we didn't have and those experiences, rather than trying to share and give them the information that we didn't know how to manage a lot of these situations. And so I think that's where it's important. Education is the key, and understanding that, money, like everything else, is a tool. And so you got to be able to understand the uses of it and not allow it to make use of you. And so that control decision making.
I love that that thought you just said. It's not, we tend to want to give our kids what we didn't have, when really what we need to do is give them the knowledge that we didn't have. That's a great thought. That's a great thought. Before we go, because we are about out of time, what role has well, let me ask you two questions. First, what role does generosity play in people being able, if you think it does, and people being able to enjoy their wealth? Not, it's one thing to produce resources, but to be able to enjoy. Yeah, does generosity play a role? Or there's some other things that play a role in people who not only produce wealth but are happy then, in what they do with it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a firm believer that people need people, right? Like, so I believe that, we're all blessed to bless other people. And I think that's a huge part of, how we were created as people. Like, we're expected to do life together, to, do life alongside of people and try to pull people along, because every now and then we all need a little bit of encouragement, a little bit of motivation. So that's really important. But I'm a big believer. I do quotes. I like quotes. Every time I see a quote, I'll try to write it down and put it in my phone. And there's a young man, and hopefully I'm not butchering his last name, but it's Robert Byrne. And he says the purpose of life is a life of purpose. And so understanding that we're all created to try and make a difference in this world, because we only have a certain amount of time. And that, brings me to it's a poem by Linda Ellis called The Dash. If you haven't read it, I would suggest that you go read it. Because a lot of times we focus on that, the birth date and then the end date, but there's a dash in between, and it's the impact that we make in that time frame is really important. And understanding, how do we want to be remembered for the time that we were able to spend here on Earth.
Well, I've really enjoyed getting to talk with you, but let me ask you one last question. Is, as you look back on to this point in your life, like you said, a lot of different roles along the way. What role has faith played in you becoming the person that you are today?
That's the foundation of who I am, and I didn't understand it growing up. My grandmother was very heavily involved in the church. My grandfather was heavily involved in church. Everything that I did, they always told me, like, hey, we're praying for you. I understand the power of prayer. And so it's a huge part of who I am. Like I said, when I went to Auburn, the last thing that I thought was going to school, I was going to get baptized during my time at Auburn when I went to school to play football. And so, understanding, through it all, that's been a huge part of my foundation. And I think that's kind of been the North Star for me in terms of guiding my career and, keeping me along the path and creating those guardrails when I did deviate off the course a little bit. It was always that guiding light of, okay, you realize to some degree that discernment that you're doing a little bit too much and get back on the path. And so I think that's played a huge part, probably the main part of why I am where I am.
Well, I want to tell you, I appreciate what you do. A lot of times people create wealth or have success, only for themselves. So the idea that, you would take your experiences and your success and then, pour into, and especially this area of people's lives, because as a pastor, you see so many folks who their financial struggles impact their marriages, it impacts their parenting, it impacts and it's not always, those who don't have. Sometimes it's those who do have, but don't know, are hanging on to it so tightly and don't know how to manage it, that it just robs them of their joy. So I really appreciate you giving, the wisdom and experience you have to help people to manage it instead of it managing them.
Right. No, I thank you. I appreciate it. It was great speaking with you. I appreciate the time. And so always great catching up with you.
All right. Hey, how can they follow you or know what's going on with you?
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram at Ronnie23 Brown. I'm on X. I always mess that up at Ronnie23 Brown. And so, you can look me up. I think I'm LinkedIn as well. So feel free to contact me, find me. And I love to, whether I can pray for you or whatever I can do, I'd be happy to.
Well, thanks so much, Ronnie. It's great to have you. Great to talk with you, and love hearing your story and all that's going on. And good luck to you with the boy and the girl.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Happy holiday season.
All right. Hey, guys, thanks so much for tuning in to TroyGramling.com. I want to encourage you. There's a video version online and YouTube and then all the platforms. We're here every Thursday talking to interesting people and hoping that as we partner with them, we'll become who God's created us to be. God bless. Have an incredible Thursday, and we'll see you next week.